Welcome to the Enduring Church Podcast, hosted by Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis. Okay, Nathan, this is exciting. This is our first episode. For you guys checking us out, this is the first episode of the Enduring Church Podcast. I am Michael Davis.
Hey, I'm Nathan Castleberry. So excited to be here for our pilot episode.
Well, we'll see how it goes. So I guess to start, just to give people an understanding of who we are, and maybe that way they can understand why they should, why they should listen to us. So Nathan, go ahead, maybe tell people a little bit about who you are and how you got here right now.
Yeah, sure. Well, so hey everybody, I'm Nathan Castleberry. I am a husband, a dad, and a pastor, and a barbecue enthusiast. So between those things, I try to keep my plate pretty full with things that are life-giving. And I'm sure there'll be opportunities to talk about all of those on this podcast. But with the exception of working at Little Caesars for a little bit in 2003, all I've ever done is serve churches as a worship pastor. I've even led women's ministry. I've done just about everything except handle the church money. So I'm currently a lead pastor in Canton, Georgia, at a church called Local Church. And, I'm just really excited for us to be able to have some conversations about what an enduring church looks like.
Nice. So I am not a pastor, though I do love me some barbecue, and this is something I did not know about you, so we're going to have to remedy this. My background is I did not grow up in the church. I had a lot of jobs, none of which have been pastoring. But about 10 years ago, Jesus showed who he was to me and how much he loves me, and almost immediately went into ministry. But currently I own First Day Marketing, which actually serves churches and ministries. But my background is weird and crazy, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But everything from, father, husband. I was a soldier for 4 years with a deployment. Worked in for-profit ministry all around, but this is super exciting. I have a heart for the local church, and for some weird reason, I've got a lot of friends who are pastors. And then again, just trying to serve churches so that they can serve their community. So super excited to be here with you, Nathan. I've known Nathan for a couple years now, getting closer and becoming friends over the last year. But this is going to be fun, man. I'm stoked to not only just get to unpack this stuff with you, but also just to get to know you even a little bit better. And I'm just to give you a little heads up, beef ribs and smoked Boston butt. So just know that if you are curious as to how you can serve me, that would be the way to go.
Yeah, man. Well, beef ribs are not one of my specialties. My signature dish is a weird one. My signature dish is smoking pork belly, and doing some sliced pork belly, some burn ends. And, I think my passion for barbecue is what helps me surviving reading through Leviticus. There's some, the priests got to partake in the smoked meat, the burnt offerings. So I feel like it's biblical.
That's absolutely right. So let's get into it, because otherwise I think we'll be talking about barbecue for the next 30 minutes. But
by the way, my friends at my church they try to count how many times there's a grilling or barbecue or food metaphor in the sermon. So I'm a little self-conscious of that now. So I'm going to try to limit the barbecue references from this point on.
You limit nothing, brother. You limit nothing. So, yeah. I asked you to join me on this. I've been kind of, muddling around with trying to figure out how to make this podcast and what it was going to look like. And then we had some really good conversations regarding just our heart for the local church and just having our, churches really love their communities. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what the heart behind the Enduring Church podcast is specifically for you and why you think it was needed?
Yeah, well, some of my earliest memories are riding with my dad to church early on Sunday mornings. Not a preacher's kid, but my family was there, early on Sundays, back on Sunday evenings, and on Wednesdays as well. We even had a time where we were part of the Tuesday night visitation So I was one of those weird Christians who would drop cookies off at your house if you visited our church the Sunday before. So I just remember going to early to church with my dad to see him in praise team rehearsal and choir rehearsal, and at an early age, just serving our youth group. My youth pastor found out I played guitar, and so from like 14 on, I was basically responsible for the Wednesday night program. So it's just been kind of baked into my psyche, is that church is a centerpiece of our way of life. It's not an event. It's not something that's extracurricular. So there really was no other pathway for me to but to serve the church. But in the 20 years now that I've been like getting paid to do this, I feel like I've seen some amazing things of the bride of Christ showing up in some powerful ways, loving God, loving people. And I've also seen some hurtful ways, right? Been on the receiving end of church hurt. I've probably been guilty of, maybe delivering some church hurt. But there's just it's a mixed bag, and I think ministry is great in the ways that it's great. It's challenging in the ways that it's challenging. And if we can, just bring a little bit of the overlap of our backgrounds in marketing and leadership and strategic thinking and communication and equipping the saints, if we can kind of find the Venn diagram, the overlap of those two, I would just love to care for pastors, to serve pastors, to cheer them on and talk about hopefully helpful ideas.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting from my perspective. One of the things that I've seen, again, I've only been a believer for just a little bit more than 10 years, but again, went right into ministry, actually working for the North American Mission Board, which are, almost exclusively focused on church planning. So met a lot of pastors, have been in church, and just have noticed some interesting changes in the way that things have gone, not just in the way that pastors are pastoring, but the way that people are consuming content, the way that people are engaging with church, both whether they're in person or online, the way that they're seeing how, like, celebrity pastors and all the other things that are going on. I just thought it'd be really interesting to see that, because the way that people are interacting with each other and then also with their community has changed so drastically. I think a lot of pastors have just kind of not necessarily missed the boat, but are missing opportunities. And I think this is where I think it makes a lot of sense, where from my perspective, especially with my background, and we'll get a little bit more into the whole thing with the fact that I led marketing and communication for Rabbi Zacharias, and all that comes with it. But just understanding that things have changed, the Roman road has changed. And I think pastors have a very interesting opportunity, not just in regards to how they love the flock that God has given them, but also in the way that they can love their communities. And we made that little joke, like your literal neighbors, because I'm hearing that a lot. Again, not just in regards to from the people I go to church with or the other people I know who are believers, but just there's a really big kind of like a disconnect between not just how we talk about the gospel and how we love our neighbors, but just in a sense, almost like an unwillingness. So this is the reason why I'm super excited to do this with you.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Jesus had a pretty broad definition of who a neighbor is,
Yeah.
and one of the things I hope that we can do in this podcast is help maybe pastors start thinking about each other as neighbors, that we're on the same
Yeah.
team, that we're not in competition. And, that the illustrations that Paul uses for the body of Christ, it's while I think there is a local, immediate application for that. I wonder what the, more global implications are, and if we could more see our individual bodies of Christ as part of a bigger collective body, and we could realize we're on the same team. Unity is kind of one of those things that mattered a lot to Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the blessings of actually becoming friends with a lot of pastors is the fact that there's it's so isolating for so many of them. And the reality is that we're not just individuals within a church, or again, if you're a pastor, you're an individual person who's responsible for the congregation that you've been blessed with. The reality is that we have so many others that are there to support each other, but so few are actually taking that just the gift of other pastors. And the reality is that very few people understand how isolating it is. And I think that if you're not enduring yourself, you're not going to have an enduring church. And I think that is fundamentally the problem. We've all heard of pastors who have just fallen. Pastors, actually, several years ago, we had a pastor who committed suicide, who was a church planner. The reality is that you are inundated with just different just stimuli that are just not necessarily healthy. You have temptations just like everyone else. And the reality is that if you're trying to do this in isolation, you're just gonna suffer. And I've had friends who have lost churches. I've had friends who are just they have this smile. They're there every Sunday. They're going to hospitals, and the reality is, at the end of the day, they are suffering, maybe even more than anyone else in their church.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a as a pastor, you have your own hard stuff in your family and your life and your own temptations, your own vulnerabilities. That hopefully we can maybe even discuss some best
Yeah,
practices on how to manage that. But then you're also trauma adjacent,
yeah,
and so you're just, if you are in the hospitals, if you are actually doing the work of shepherding and not just preaching. And that's not me like firing a warning shot. I'm just,
yeah,
I'm like, that's just, that comes that both of these are important aspects of shepherding, right? And
yeah,
so if you are taking the shepherding side of pastoral leadership seriously, you're going to be around a lot of other people's heart, and you become a container for that. And so I get really excited about maybe discussing ways we can help people empty those containers of other people's hard stuff in a healthy way, so it doesn't spill over into personal struggle and whatnot. But I think another thing that excites me about our podcast, though, is not just the perspective of a ministry leader, but someone like you who is in ministry in your own unique way, right? You serve at your home church, but then you also serve as a communications expert to a lot of other pastors. And so I get really excited about even just discussing like clarity and messaging and strategic thinking, and being able to talk about ways that there's kind of a synergy there. I feel like I grew up as a young pastor, kind of in the John Maxwell Catalyst like leadership conferences. And I was really grateful for all of that like leadership emphasis that was being placed. But I feel like maybe that we swung the pendulum a little too far into maybe CEO style leadership. So I'm always going to be trying to bring the pendulum back to the middle with more shepherding style leadership. But that doesn't mean we ignore the organizational structure and the clarity and the tactics that help us reach more people. So I'm really excited about the perspective that you bring, because just in coffee conversations that we've had around where we work together in Canton, in our co-working spaces, just simple coffee conversations with you and some best practices tips have changed the game for us in regards to you know, search engine optimization, all these things that I've got no real concept of how to do anything with. So I feel like, that's one of my things that I eagerly get excited about sharing with our friends and our listeners is, some best practices, not just for self-care and pastoral leadership, but also what you're doing out there, pastor, with the gospel. It needs to reach people. It needs to reach as many people as possible. So Michael's going to bring some really exciting concepts and ideas, and we're going to, bring our friends into this in ministry, friends from other, areas that are maybe ministry adjacent that we think could be a value add to kind of that tool belt you're wearing as a spiritual leader.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something that should give you a lot of optimism, because we see a lot in regards to like just the culture and everything like that. People are searching for churches. People are looking for God. They might not even know it. Just looking at search queries, people are searching for churches near them in the millions every single week.
Right.
So the cool thing is that we have a substantial opportunity that as the world gets darker, the gospel gets brighter. And I
Wow.
think that this is one of a huge opportunity, not just in regards to making sure that you're doing best practices and everything like that, but how do you love your community in a way that really reflects the light of Jesus, that is that lampstand. Because I'm telling you, as things get harder, people always seek answers and they always seek for the truth. And guess what? Jesus is the monopoly of truth, right? And this is a thing where, again, I as I've worked with ministries, as I've worked with parachurch organizations, they do amazing work. But as I joke around a lot, I didn't see any of that in Acts. I haven't heard Paul. He didn't write any letters to parachurch organizations. The reality is that what you guys are doing, what you're doing, Nathan, this is the hands and feet of Jesus. And I think that for a lot of us, we've forgotten that. I think even people within our churches have forgotten that they are in fact the hands and feet of Jesus. They can't outsource this. And I'm seeing some really encouraging stuff, even with what's going on in the Southeast after the storms, of churches just banding together and just finding out how they can help. But the reality is that I think a lot of times we as lay people and you as pastors, I think maybe don't understand how much their community needs them, because they're just struggling to to serve the people in their churches alone. But I'm super excited to see how we can help. We don't know everything. We're going to learn this stuff together. We're both. I'm substantially older than you are. I might not look it because I've aged very gracefully, but the good news is that I think that even as we're researching and we're doing all this stuff, we're all going to learn stuff. And especially, I'm super excited about the fact that we're going to have just really amazing guests, people who are way smarter than us, who are going to come on and have really good conversations about what they've learned, the mistakes they've made. And that actually leads me into the question, because I'd really like to know, like, if you were able to get a pastor in a room in front of you and you say, this is exactly what I want you to get out of this podcast, what would that be?
Oh man. Yeah, see, I'm one of those guys that has a hard time kind of naming like what my favorite TV show is or naming what my favorite book of the Bible is, because I just, I'm easily enthused about a lot of different things. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really in the title, this enduring church. I'm kind of sick and tired of just every month, just scrolling through social media and seeing another leader that falls, or I mean, I've closed two churches.
Yeah.
Like I've been on stage shutting churches down as part of my ministry history. And so that's rough, it's hard, and so I really do think that what we are doing with the gospel and the partnership that Jesus has entrusted into us with the expansion of the kingdom, right? Like, it's too important to not endure. It's too important to just get caught up in how good our church looks on Instagram, or I mean, like, all these things matter. You're the marketer, so I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about social media at some point. But
Yeah.
I used to be a worship pastor, and I can tell you, man, like, a lot of times I feel like creativity in churches is planned in a way that is concerned more about like what's going to be relevant to pop culture than what's going to actually minister to their localized neighborhood, and so I don't think that's fruit that lasts. So I want to be able to offer something that helps ministry leaders, spiritual leaders stay in this for the long haul. And I think hopefully maybe we can experience what it means to realign our heart with the heart of the Father. I mean, it's not overly reductionistic to talk about loving your neighbor. I mean, Jesus said that's equally as important as the first commandment, which is loving God. And then, he says in that, love your neighbor as yourself. So I just see this, kind of like, love Trinity existing, that to me is kind of reflective of the Trinity itself. Like, so we love God, we love people, but the way we love people is connected to how we love ourselves. And the way we love people is also supposed to be emblematic of how we love God. So I hope that there's something that we can offer that helps us do what we need to do, pull the levers, turn the dials that need to be turned so that we can stay in this for the long haul and endure and hear, well done when we see Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. And another, bit of encouragement. I've gone to a lot of church plants. You planted a church, so you understand this. It's young people aren't searching for fancy lighting and fog machines and amazing worship. They're searching for community. They're searching for, the gospel. They're searching for, a place to feel like they've belonged to something. And they're searching for places for people to, or for people to just live life together, but then also to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And again, the data, and I'll show more of it because we've got some phenomenal data to show how people are not necessarily looking for the experience; they're looking for the community. And yes, there's always going to be those large, flashy churches, and they're always going to be full. But the reality is the people that you're looking for, the people who are going to be active, the people who are going to be like real representatives within the community, and who are going to bring people to Jesus, those people are looking for Bible believing, God honoring, gospel centered churches, and the data is reflective of it. So I'm hoping, again, from my perspective, I hope the pastors are not just encouraged, but understanding that they can be faithful. They don't have to do these quote unquote strategies and tactics. They can just love well, preach the gospel, preach the Bible, and people will come and understand it's not on them. The Spirit is there, and understand that things are not that the kingdom of God is not going to rise and fall because of your actions. The God is there; He's placed you there uniquely in that community, in this context. But know that there's ways that you can do this better, but frankly, mostly just how you can not get burned out. The thing that breaks my heart so much. It is a blessing. I've heard this from you, and I've heard this from a lot of pastors. It is a blessing to pastor. You're not hanging drywall, and you're not, fighting in a war, but it's very difficult. But how do you see that blessing with the trauma adjacency, as you said, and then also the fact that you are under constant attack, and not just spiritual attack, for let's just be honest, from the flesh as well. But I hope that they get encouragement. I hope that they get real world things that they can do in regards to being better at outreach, how they can activate their churches better, and then they could just find that margin that allows them to not just love their churches better, but love their families better, and then also love pastors and their community better. Because I'll tell you, when I seen pastors like really relying on each other, understanding that they're not competition, but that they're fellow laborers, man, I'll see life change among pastors. Because at the end of the day, and I said this before, if you're not enduring as a pastor, your church is not enduring, your family is not enduring. So that's what I hope for
Amen,
people to
man.
get out of it.
So I will say this just as a just an invitation to our friends in ministry in all of its various expressions. I've worked at churches of 20 plus thousand, 10,000. I'm pastoring a church plant of 300 right now. I've merged churches where we've been the ones surrendering the key and the ones receiving the keys. I've been a worship leader in the very attractional model, and where we've lowered aerial artists in with all the rigging and all the LED walls, and I've also just done stuff with just me and my acoustic guitar. And so what I want to say to people is, yeah, you might hear some hot takes from Michael and I from time to time,
Mostly
but
from me, but yes.
but we are really going to commit to you to try to restrain a spirit of criticism. We
Yeah.
love the bride of Christ. And I want to say, like, I want people to feel freed up to play to their strengths. If you are hyper creative and you've been blessed with the resources to do production well, like, go for it. But hopefully what we can have conversations around. I think part of an enduring church is learning how to you know be reminded of like the purpose that the tools serve, right? And I know in former ministry settings, I have, put way more effort into the tools than the message, right?
Yeah.
And so again, I want people to feel welcomed and encouraged to be here from various denominations and various worship styles, because that's not really going to be the substance of what we talk about. It may come up from time to time, but we want to talk about the tensions that come at more of like the motivational philosophical level, like growth versus health, evangelism and discipleship, being relevant, being worldly, like all these things that I think we really need to wrestle with first before we then figure out what the proper tool belt is to accomplish the mission.
100%. Well, I think that is what I've got for today. We're gonna be figuring this stuff out with y'all. We don't know what the format's gonna look like completely. We don't know a lot of things, and you, I think, me more than Nathan. But you will all learn that about us. Is we're gonna try to figure this out with you. We're gonna have ways for you guys to reach out, ask questions. Hopefully, we'll have some of y'all as guests on the show. But just know we appreciate what you guys are doing. It's hard. We know it's hard. It's a blessing, but it's hard. And we hope to make it maybe just a little bit more encouraging and a little bit, maybe give you a little bit of strategies to be able to do this well. Because again, your community needs you. They need what you're doing. And even more importantly, they need your church. We're excited to help and in any way we can. And we're excited to learn alongside of you guys.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a fun journey.
Sweet. Well, again, this is the Enduring Church Podcast. I am Michael.
And I am Nathan. I guess this is like our, stay classy San Diego.
I don't know. We'll figure that one out too. But listen, you guys have a good one. And we will see you guys I guess in a couple weeks.
Generic placeholder sign off.
Yeah, there we go. Have a good one, guys. This has been the Enduring Church Podcast with Nathan Castleberry and Michael Davis. We'll see you next time.